thank you everyone for coming. This is my Balancing Cosplay in Your Career panel. Tips from a full-time journo, part-time cosplayer, and others. So, quick introduction. Whom's the heck am I? My name is ChibiTifa. I'm actually one of the cosplay guests and judges at San Japan this year. If you are in the cosplay contest, I probably already judged you today, or I will be judging you tomorrow. I have a very long day of judging tomorrow. I will be locked up in a room for 8 hours. Pray for us. This is my first time in San Antonio, my first time at San Japan. I am so excited to be here. I want to thank the San Japan staff for bringing me out here, giving me an opportunity to judge the Texas cosplay community. Texas is a lot of fun. This is my second time in Texas. I was at A-Kon a couple of years ago as a guest judge over there as well. I know DFW is different from San Antonio, I was told. So I'm really looking forward to see what San Antonio has to offer. Today, I saw a lot of good things today, and tomorrow I know it's just gonna be a full day of wonderful costumes and wonderful performances. But who am I? I need to update this slide because this year is my 20th year cosplaying. Do not ask my age, I will not reveal it to you. I'm a millennial, and I know we get the jokes from Gen Z all the time. I respect Gen Z cosplayers because you are the new generation, and Alpha coming up. I've actually judged Alpha cosplayers, so knowing that there are 2 generations now, like basically behind me, just like up and coming in this hobby really makes me really happy. I am a World Cosplay Summit 2021 USA rep. My partner for World Cosplay Summit was Barracuda Cosplay. Please follow her if you haven't already. If you're into idols, she is actually part of an idol group called Project Constellation. So if you love the idol scene, love Love Live, Project Sekai, all that kind of stuff, she's super into it. And we did WCS together a couple of years ago. Virtually, and we won our trip to Japan, which was last year, and it was so wonderful. I have about 10 years, actually now 11 years of judging and competing. I have a couple of novice awards under my belt. I have a couple of journeymen. I was so afraid to enter master because once I got the WCS title, they're like, you have to compete at master level now because that's an international title. So I was like, well, crap. So I am now considered a master level cosplayer, and it's just an honor to just be among so many amazing people in this community and to even learn new skills, because even as a master myself, there's still some things I don't know and still some things that I'm learning. And, she's a senior broadcast manager for a major news station? How can you do all that and work a job like that? For my protection, and because I don't know how November's gonna turn out, I will not reveal where I work. So just to be on the safe side, because journalists are kind of under attack and were under attack, I will not reveal the station that I work for, but I do work for a major international news station. So I have a lot of responsibilities. All right, so if you're here, you probably have a full-time job and you're like, I don't do this for a living. I just want to know how I can do this and still be able to work and not die. My panel is catered towards people who craft. So if you mostly if you mostly buy your costumes, obviously you're not con crunching because you're just buying it and wearing it. Nothing wrong with that, you are still a cosplayer. But just to preface for my panel, this is mostly for people who do make the majority of their costumes, that do con crunch, that do want to bring their sewing machine to a con and sew at 3 o'clock in the morning, Thursday or Friday night, which you should not be doing. So my first plan is I gauge my time. My start time, depending on my build, should be at least, and I should probably edit that should say about 4 to 5 months before the event due to work. Depending on the build, if it involves a lot of armor, if it involves a lot of embroidery, especially a lot of hand sewing, I may want to start sooner than later. For example, I'll get into my World Cosplay Summit costume because I was on a very tight deadline with that. So let's say I wanted to make something new for San Japan. I should have started my San Japan costume, depending on everything, from May. If it was some insane embroidered, like Sakizo type of situation, I probably should have started at the beginning of the year. Because if you've seen the Sakizo designs or Hannah Alexander or anything crazy, you really need to gauge your time accordingly and not start so late, because it will show in your work. Material hunting. Where am I getting my fabric? Online, Joanne? Will it come in time? I use a lot of online sites. I live in Maryland. I'm from Maryland, so I'm actually closer to New York. Sometimes I will make a trip. Not everybody can do this, but sometimes I will make a trip to the New York Fashion District. Just spend a week and I have a bunch of friends up there and see if I can source some materials from there. Most of the time I get them from online. Nothing wrong with Joanne, but if you've been to Joanne lately, after the whole bankruptcy situation, their fabric selection is starting to dwindle a little bit. So I also am not a fan of a lot of the quality of their fabrics. I look for, when I make a costume, I need longevity. I need to be able to rewear a costume more than once. I don't believe in just making something and just letting it sit there and rot. So I visit sites like onlinefabricstore.com, Fabric Wholesale Direct. If any, I should have put this on the slide, but fabrichwholesaledirect.com is a wonderful website for a lot of fabrics. I love their matte satins, their organzas. Just the quality of the material is really good for really cheap. Like, you can get matte satin for $4.99 a yard. And a lot of good quality cottons, just everything you can dream of. Jacquards. There's sales. They have sales a lot. Sometimes we'll have 4th of July sales. I think they have a Labor Day sale this weekend. And bless you. And they have a lot of Black Friday sales as well. But at the same time, how long is that going to take? Because they have to mail that to me. Well, I have the luxury of living on the East Coast, and the factory for that particular online store is in New York. So most of the time I do get my fabrics within the week. So you also have to take in consideration where you are in the country. If you live here in Texas, it may take probably an extra day or two to get to you. Pacing, after work or weekends. I'm the type of person where if I'm capable of doing something after a stressful workday, I'll do it. If it's just too stressful, because I do work in the news, I will put it off, and I'll get to that in a later slide, because that all involves with pacing. If I know I'm on a deadline, I make sure I'm comfortable enough and that I'm mentally able enough to work on that costume after work. Weekends is really my sweet spot, because I do have weekends off. Sometimes, depending on the news, or if somebody dies or something crazy happens, like for the past month or two, I won't be able to work on weekends, because I'll get the call saying, oh, well, the queen is dead. Oh, well, this happened. Oh, this exploded. Well, okay, then I'm on call. Then I have to put off that project and do it another time. So it really depends. With me, it's very sporadic, but most of the time my weekends are free, and I'm able to gauge when I start everything, and I break it down according to what I have to do. And accessories. Do I make them myself or get them 3D printed to save time? Most of my accessories I do make myself. I have a 3D printer, but I should dabble in it. It just sits there. It shouldn't be collecting dust. I should learn how to use it. But most of the time, I'm a foam person, so I tend to make a lot of my 3D things out of foam. I just find it easier to do for me. I love doing things by hand, and it's just very therapeutic for me to prime and do everything. Some of the times, if it's something super intricate and I want to get 3D printed, I'll either go to Dangerous Ladies, they're based out of Canada, or I'll have, now I have a friend that's close to me that will 3D print my things. So I will get it modeled, she will print it, and I will find the time to sand it, prime it, and do everything to finish it in time. Sometimes that might be faster than try making it myself. If I'm competing, I make it myself because the more you make yourself, the more points you get, right? But if it's like for a costume that I'm doing with a group or a costume that I just want to make myself without worrying about competing or anything, then I will just get somebody else to 3D print it and still do it myself. Any questions before I move on to the next slide? All right. Time management. All right, so time management is something that I used to struggle with years ago, and now I kind of have a system that works. I can only speak for what works for me. Some people have their own time management system. I'm very old school. Again, I will not reveal my age, but I have to have things written down. I love writing down things. Some people are like, well, I put reminders in my phone, or I have an app. You can use app. At the end of the presentation, I actually have like a list of all like the planner apps that are out there. There's an app called Cosplay that a lot of cosplayers do use, and people have told me that it really helps them. That's great and all. I'm just very old school. I have a whiteboard in my sewing room that I write down, okay, the next con is Hall Mat in December. This is the costume I'm working on, what is done. So everything is written down on a board for me. So every time I walk into the room, it just stares me in the face. And I'm like, oh, I guess I have to do it now. So I select my costumes based on what I know I can get done by the deadline. I'm not going to do anything insane in 3 months. I know how I work. I know how I have to pace myself. You do have some people that are like, oh, I can make a whole suit of armor in a month. I applaud them and it looks amazing. I know personally with the nature of my job, I can't do that. For like an armor build or anything, I would have to give at least 3 months for myself. Again, I'm only speaking for me. All right, so for example, the deadline is April 7th. Costume should have been started in January, latest end of January. Because for me, the beginning of the year can be very hectic news-wise, so I know that if I want to start something for spring or late spring, I have to get started as soon as I can. So if I'm purchasing materials online, I order by the beginning of the month. So on the other side, I have my scheduling hours. This has changed. So my work hours are from 7:30 to 4 p.m. and depending on the nature of the day, I do work on costumes after work from 5 to 9 p.m. So those are my work hours. I work. That's how I make my money. That's how I'm able to afford my costumes. So that's important. So I know from 5 to 9 after I get off, okay, this is the time I have after work to work on certain specific things, whether it be my bodice piece, whether it be my skirt, whether it be hand embroidery or hand sewing. I know I have that length of time. Never mind, work is hectic. So a lot of the times, I just skip on working on the costume that evening. But at the same time, again, I can afford to do that because I gave myself ample time. That's what you want to do. If you know you have like a project for work coming up, or there's like a part of the year, some people have fiscal years, some people have times in the year where things are just get crazy, then that shouldn't be the time you should be starting your costume. You should have started your costume before that. So when you get to that part of your work year, you're like, okay, it's going to be hectic, but I started my costume far enough in advance where I can still pace myself and get it done for this convention. Never mind, the entire week is hectic. Again, I have given myself enough time where I can just not work on anything that week and still be okay. Work on the costume over the weekend if I want to. Sometimes the work week can be so hectic for me, I want to see nothing on the weekend. I don't want to see my sewing machine, just put the PS5 controller in my hand and I will, or the Switch, and I will play Ace Attorney or something and just have a relaxing time. But again, from what I told you before, I can afford to do that because I already started. Any questions? Any concerns? Okay. All right, so this is the best example because this was an international contest. We had a very tight turnaround for this because It was just bonkers. So the entries were due June 1st. We entered the competition at the end of March. So they opened the applications around, I think it was March 30th, they opened applications. Me and my partner, Barracuda, were like, let's do this. We know exactly what we wanted to do, but here's the thing. We knew we wanted to enter in Utana. So for something like that, you already have to know what you want to do. I would not suggest to enter something and then you're like, okay, what now? No. If you're going to enter in has-been, enter in has-been, which you can't for World Cosplay Summit because it's Japanese only. But for any competition, if you, like, let's say San Japan opened up their signups, y'all should have known what you wanted to sign up with because they ask you about that. So definitely know what you want to do in the nature of if it involves a performance, that's a whole nother issue as well. So you have to put in time for the practice of your performance, writing your script. If you have multiple people, you have to have that involved, and everybody has their own schedule. So you really have to gauge that time accordingly. So Anthe was started April 5th. So I had already ordered everything for Anthe because we knew we were entering the competition. So I received my fabric beforehand and I started April 5th. And I used my entire weekends plus 3 days of after work hours each week. So you may not see in the picture, but I actually had like hand embroidery. I did hand applique on the bodice. This version of Anthe is her Rose Bride outfit, but it was more inspired by her South Asian roots because Anthe is Indian. And I wanted to portray her culture through her Rose Bride costume. So I use a lot of techniques that Indian brides use for their bridal wear, like the lehenga and the choli. And a lot of that has lace overlay and sequins and pearls and a lot of hand stitching involved. So I had to basically break each week up by what I wanted to do. So I put on like some old school like anime like Trigun, Escaflowne, all that, while I was basically hand sewing the bodice after work every day. So yeah, the costume had to be done by the first weekend of May for filming because that was the only time our videographer was able to film our video. She was not able to fit us in any other time, and that was the videographer we wanted to go with because she's an anime fan. She's also a fan of like cosplay cinematography, and she does that. So she has an eye for that kind of thing. We didn't want to go with just any old photographer or any old videographer. We wanted to go specifically with Molly because she knew what she was doing. So that means we had to make some sacrifices if we wanted to go with her, right? So she said that was the only time she had. We had to make sure our costumes were done by then. So like I said, each week was broken down into what I wanted to get done. Bodice, skirt, hand applique, hand stitching, etc. Accessories were done on the weekend as well. Those were casted. The crown was actually EVA foam, primed with Mod Podge and spray painted, and Barry, my partner, actually did my wig. She was responsible for both her wig and Utana's wig. And I was able to get this costume done by filming time. So I'll show the video at the end of the performance of what we did, at the end of the panel of what we did, because I'm pretty proud of what we were able to have and come up with in such a short amount of time. And it involved both of us basically pacing ourselves because we both have real life jobs. Barry's also, she is a manga letterer. So she is responsible for, when you read manga, she's responsible for how the letters are in the text and like all the sound effects, how they're placed. It's a really fun job. It's actually very interesting. She explained it to me. So, but it can be very stressful because she has to make sure it's placed in a way that makes sense, especially when you're reading something from right to left. So she also has deadlines because those manga have to be printed and out within a certain time. So she's stressing out about that. I'm stressing out about my deadlines, but at the same time, we were both able to create both of our costumes, and we had a total of 4. So I had this one and her school uniform for basically an on-screen quick change, which only took me like a weekend to do because it was a regular school uniform with gigantic puffy sleeves. Any questions about the construction of my costume, about World Cosplay Summit itself, about competitions itself, how to get ready for them? Anything? Yes, Valentino.
I've been in the cosplay game myself for a while, but I kind of took a huge retirement back in, 2014 all the way until 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Has there really been any changes to how judges, well, I guess judge cosplays from that time?
I can only speak for myself as a judge. Everybody has their own judging style. I've been judging since you've been cosplaying. I've been judging for pretty much over 10 years now. And one thing I look for cleanliness. I look for fit. And I just look at how well everything is executed. So if you're coming to me and say that I hand beaded this, that's great that you hand beaded that. How neat is the hand beading? Because if you're gonna do something so intricate, it has to be done well. But that's just universal across the board. But as far as the styles of judging, I have judged with so many people. I've judged with international people. I'm judging with Jin behind Infinity. She's from the Philippines. So I've learned, especially with judging and competing, especially overseas and with entering international competitions, that everyone is completely different with what they're looking for and everyone's style is different. So again, I can only speak for myself. As far as how it's changed, I think it's pretty much the same. Because when I competed, I was told the same thing with my judges. Oh, your fit's great. That's what I'm looking for. Oh, you did this, you hand embroidered this. That's neat. So I think it's more universal with what they're looking for as far as their style. That can be different depending on the judge. Anyone else? Yes.
What's the crown and all the metal work made up of this costume?
Oh yes, you said metal work. It's so funny. I wish I could do metalwork. Metalwork is more of I've realized a lot of Europeans love metalwork because they have access to that kind of stuff. My crown is actually EVA foam, but I was able to prime it to make it look like metal. A lot of people thought it was metal. I'm like, no, this is EVA foam. It took many, many layers of, I did wood glue and a Mod Podge, and I also sealed it with the Flex Bond. I did everything to get it as smooth as I possibly could, and I spray painted it. I used Rust-Oleum spray paint, and by the time it looked like it was shining. You'll see in the video, like it was shining in the light. And I was like, how did I do this? I'm just obsessed with making sure things are clean. Again, that is how I judge. I look for cleanliness because I'm not you're gonna have defects every now and then, but this was something for an international competition. And one thing about these competitions, they are looking for accuracy, they're looking for cleanliness. It's like the little things are looking for down to the T. So I had to make sure I could get that as smooth as I possibly could. The epaulettes, funny story, the bar epaulettes are resin and I use candy bar molds. So because that was resin that could easily be spray painted, and so were the balls on the epaulettes they were a resin fill, and I was able to do that. I was able to just have the hard resin just in a temperate area because I didn't want like bubbles forming on the surface, because if you spray paint it, it can show. So I made sure it was in like a room temperature away from, because I have a separate room where I just have things and nobody goes in there because you want to inhale those fumes, and I had the window open. So I was able to cure for 2 days. And none of the bubbles rose up to the surface to create anything porous. So I was able to spray paint that gold as well. The brooch, my partner Barry actually made the brooches. We actually found the backings on Etsy, and the jewel itself, they were all resin painted on the back with glitter iridescent nail polish. Any questions? Any other questions? Yes.
Have you ever had to compromise on a design or a technique to like get it done by a deadline, or like just because you couldn't execute something that you had envisioned in your head?
Yes, this costume. It was funny because I wanted to do, and I think I was lucky I didn't do too much with this costume, because if I did what I really wanted to do, because I wanted to add like white pearls all over the place and do other things, it would have been too busy. And I was actually told that, like, one of my friends was like, no, I'm glad you didn't do that, because it would have looked like you did too much. And sometimes I can be very extra. I actually wanted to do something with the crown as well. I wanted to add more to it, but I ran out of time because I had to film. But it turned out okay, because having the mateness and the shininess of just the crown, having it being plain, it really broke up the craziness of the actual costume. Because when I'm in the light, like, I don't want to just blind everyone and have everything be busy. So even for the epaulettes, I was debating on doing something with those too. I ran out of time, but I'm like, you know what? Maybe this looks better plain, because there's a contrast with the costume, which is what you also want as well. I know there's like, I don't want to say it's a trend, but it's more of a style where people are adding things to like anime costumes to make them pop. I've seen people put embellishments on their free run costumes, or like rhinestones or something, or use like gold trim with like sequins to make it pop, even with dungeon meshy costumes. Like they're adding their own touches to costumes, which is wonderful. But you don't want to go over the top that it doesn't look like the character anymore. There was one, I think it was Anime NYC, it was Best in Show. It was a Howl and Sophie. And the Howl coat had on the diamonds, like beading on each one of where the diamonds intersected. It was a subtle touch. It wasn't too much, but it was gorgeous. If you look up the Anime NYC winners, please look them up, because the way it looked on the stage, and it's so Howl. If you've seen Howl's Moving Castle, it fit his character. And the blouse had embroidery on it, like his design and everything. It wasn't too much, because it fits him, and it just looked like it could be like a Sakizo version or like a Hannah Alexander version of his costume. But to answer your question, yes. Like, there are a lot of things I wanted to do, but it ended up not happening, but it ended up helping me in the long run, because sometimes too much is not good. Any other questions? Okay. So I'm burnt out. What do? So I get to a part in my costume, or a part where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired. Cosplay was a mistake. It should die. Why am I doing this? Which I have thought several times. You want to step back and breathe. I know it sounds something like a therapist would say, but you want to step back and breathe a little bit, because sometimes just breathing in and out, like a therapist would tell you, actually does help. Do not force yourself to work on something if you're not feeling it. Sometimes it's just best to just put down what you're working on and do something else that makes you happy, whether it's like, I don't know, playing Baldur's Gate, or doing something that you really like, or just to take your mind off of it. Because if you work on something and you're not feeling it, you're more prone to mess up. You're more prone to like sew your sleeve inside out, which I've done several times. I'm like, I am done with this costume. That sleeve is not what it's supposed to be doing. So, which happens. You don't want to burn yourself out to the point where you're making mistakes you shouldn't be making. That's when you're like, okay, yeah, I need to stop. Your mental health is important. Make sure you take care of that before anything else. Do not work yourself so much that it affects your mental health. that it just makes you hate everything. I've seen a lot of people do it for, like, Katsucon is notorious for con crunch. Like, if you're working to the point where you're like, you want to quit the hobby, then you should really just step back, because that means you're burnt out, your body doesn't want to do it anymore. Again, just don't force yourself to do something. You can always go back to it later. If you're running out of time, then maybe put it off to the next con. Don't be afraid to work on something else or to do something that will help. So, all right, good example would be, what was I working on? I was working on Velvet from Hasbin Hotel, which you guys will see tomorrow. I was working on doing the reverse applique, and my tension on my sewing machine was just messing up. And I was like, I don't want to do this all over again. So I just threw the top, and I'm like, all right, I want to work on something else. So I was working on my Sailor Mars costume. Sometimes you need to switch gears to get your mind back in the mindset that it should be, because if you're working on something and something's not working out, or it's just frustrating you, it's just best to put it aside. Sometimes it's best to put everything aside and just do something else. Just give your mind a break, just give your body a break from everything. So how do other cosplayers balance their jobs? So these are actually some pretty good friends of mine. Some of these cosplayers I met through judging, or I guested with them, and they told me how they deal with how they balance their jobs and everything, especially the teachers, because that's a lot. My friend Lisa, she's a child therapist. So she deals with children every day, and sometimes it can affect her mental health. She's dealing with children. Children are trusting her with things they wouldn't even tell their parents. And she told me that sometimes she just can't work on certain things because mentally it's just not there. But she's crazy. She will hand embroider. She was working on this Genshin costume where she hand embroidered her entire skirt. I think it was Rukadeva. I don't Genshin, but it's one of those kids, that character. And she did like a Genshinka of the character. And she like hand embroidered all of like the little arbiters on the skirt. It took her about 2 years to do. And she was fine with it. She was like, I know it's gonna take me more than a year because I have a job that I need to attend to and that's more important. And she wasn't competing in it. So she just takes her time with a lot of things. So a lot of her costumes takes her over a year, and she's happy with that. Perler Tricks, if you don't follow him, you should, because he makes a lot of his costumes out of the perler beads that you like melt in. He just won Best Armor for Crown this past year. He did like a Boba Fett costume out of perler beads. It was amazing. He is a high school teacher. So a lot of the times, he says most of the times that he has is the summer, or like the days off that the kids have off, because he's just grading papers a lot of the times, and he has to deal with parents, deal with the kids and everything. And summertime for him and my friend Wissy, she was a middle school teacher, summertime was really, and like the breaks, like spring break and winter break, were really times where they were like, hey, we can really try to crank these costumes out. Throughout the year, obviously it gets done, but they did tell me that, hey, yeah, summertime is where I have a lot of the time. So if you look at some of these cosplayers, they're just normal people. They have normal jobs. They try to balance everything the best they can. They each have their own system. Some of them use apps. Some of them write things down like I do. It can be a challenge because, again, your job comes first. That's your bread and butter. That's if you pay rent. It funds our cosplay. It funds you coming to these cons. So you want to make sure that you keep your job. So cosplay should be secondary. Like, a lot of us are not lucky to have cosplay as their full-time job. I would never want cosplay to be my full-time job. I'd probably hate it. But I love what I do. I love being a journalist. I love working in the field. And I just love cosplay just as much. But I had to find that balance between the two where I know if I have to get something done by a certain time, then I have a certain system put in place. Any questions or anything about competing or cosplay in general? Yes.
To what extent do you recommend that you keep like your cosplay life and your work life separate? Like, would your coworkers have your social media, or like, what do you think is best practice for that?
I'm going to be 100% honest and say it depends on your job, because unfortunately a lot of jobs see cosplay as sex work, or they find not really sex work but more on the lines of risque. I've had teachers who are like, yeah, we cosplay, and the principal's like, that's cool. Unfortunately, I've seen people who've had their jobs threatened because they just happen to do like a sexy version of something, and like either the student finds out about it. They don't have an OnlyFans or anything, but if they don't know what cosplay is, so they think it's something similar. It depends on how cool you are with your coworkers. My coworkers know my cosplay. My boss knows I cosplay. They know I'm here. They think it's like the coolest thing. My news station goes to New York Comic Con and some of the Comic Cons around like the country because, or like the local news stations go because they find it really cool. Like they're at Dragon Con right now, like interviewing cosplayers and everything, and it's broadcast, so it's not like they don't know what it is. But it depends on, I'm also going to say it depends on what kind of cosplay you do too. All cosplay to me is cosplay, I don't care. I'm not gonna say, oh, if you just do scantily clad things, it's bad. You're still cosplaying. But it's gonna depend on the nature of your job and if you feel like you can trust your coworkers with what you do. Anyone else? I don't know why that keeps doing it. So I have overall advice before I show my videos and everything. Make sure you give yourself enough time. If it's a month of, I wouldn't even say a month, I should have updated this slide. I would say if it's, yeah, no, you're right. If it's a month before the con, I wouldn't bother starting the costume. I've seen so many people, like the moment a new character in Genshin gets announced or something crazy, it's like they have to do it and they have to be the first person to do it. There was a term for it, like first thirst. We used to call it back in the day. And people wanted to be the first cosplayer to do like X character that came out. I'm glad that's kind of dying out now. But people would crunch and people would like break their necks trying to be like the first person to do this character. And the con would be like in 2 weeks. I used to do that, so I'm not guilty. I'm guilty, but like at the same time I was younger. The first time I did that was, and I pride myself in it, I think I can probably say I was the first person to do Fire Nation Katara. When that episode came out for Avatar, Anime USA was in 2 weeks. I made it for Anime USA. And I went to the Avatar photo shoot and they were like, how? This episode just came out. And I'm like, I'm crazy. That's how. I mean, good thing for me, my level of sewing, I could crap her out. Was it healthy? No, but I did it. But then you had other people, like the moment a new character would be announced for something, or it was just, people just found this weird, like thrill of trying to be the first character or trying to be the first person to do something, and it would just burn them out. And I try to tell people, hey, you don't have to, because if you're rushing something, it's going to show in your skills as well. Even if you're really good, like my Fire Nation Katara, it was good, but it could have been better if I took my time with it. Like if something comes out, I'm like, hey, I like that character, and like, okay, Dragon Age Felguard, okay, I like that character, and we'll see how they are. I would rather wait, see if I like the character, because I just don't try to do that anymore after Persona situation. So, yeah. like wait to see if I like the character, and then I take my, I don't care if I'm not the first person, I could be the 5th or the 10th. If I care about taking my time with that costume. And I would rather spend the time and do it for a con that I know is further away, and I can really get a chance to work on it and pace myself where it looks good. Because even if I'm not competing, I pride myself in my costumes looking good. Will I cut corners? Yeah, nothing wrong with cutting corners if you're not competing. But I still line everything. I will still satin stitch things. I will still do things even though I'm not competing in the costume, because that's just how I am. I want to look good at a con. I don't need things falling apart. I don't like having, like, okay, things happen, emergencies happen. That's why you have safety pins for a reason. But I shouldn't be like safety pinning stuff and hoping that nothing falls off on me at a photo shoot because I rushed to get something done. And I'm not gonna take my sewing machine to not anymore. I used to do it. I'll take my whole sewing machine to a convention to get anything done. My rule of rose, the rose is my motif, so I always say a rule of rose. If the costume isn't done and I need to, this is the one I need to change, it should be a week before the con. It isn't getting done, don't even bother. I can't begin to tell you how many people I know that like caught COVID or something and they were like, I have to get this done, and they would pass out at their sewing machine. And I'm like, are you okay? No, I had to get this done. If you're sick, something comes up, there's going to be other cons. Like, why stress yourself out? Why run yourself ragged to get a costume done for like a photo shoot or something? If it's a photo shoot, the photographer should be conscious enough to, you can tell them, hey, this is not getting done. They should be able to do it at another con. If it's for a friend group, your friend should understand. And I'm saying this for a reason. Like, your friends should understand if you cannot make it to the photo shoot, if you can't get something done. Things happen. Like, we're adults here. Gone are the days that people should be upset with you because you couldn't join their has-been group or their Genshin group. Oh, I don't have a, no. If you have anybody or a group leader that is like that, then they don't care about your well-being, just care about cosplay. They should be like, okay, you couldn't get this done, that's fine. There's other cons we can do it at, or we can do it outside of a con, or like get yourself better or something like that. Because I have actually run into I've actually had friends groups like that, that if you dropped out, they didn't want anything to do with you. But that was back in the day, and we've all grown up. So, yeah, but definitely, no, don't do that. Do not crunch. And I know there are people that get off on crunching. They work better when they're crunching. I cannot. I just curl up in a ball and cry. I cannot crunch. I have to have things done. Like I said, some people work better if they know they're under a strict deadline. Some people work harder and faster if they know the con is tomorrow and they can just crank something else out. It's not healthy, but who am I to say anything? I can only advise, I can't make you do anything. So, like, when I see people do that and they're like dead at the con and they have bags under their eyes, I'm like, are you okay? Like, well, I was up until 4 a.m. trying to get this Fire Emblem costume done. I know the character just came out last week, but I had to do this Fire Emblem costume. I'm like, okay, well, all right, well, take care of yourself. I'm not gonna judge. I mean, I kind of will a little bit, but but at the same time, I can only look out for myself. I can only advise other people not to do that. But I'm just like, there will always be other cons. Save yourself the stress and tears. I've actually had people come up to me, well, my state only has 2 cons. I can't afford to go to CatScon or go to out-of-state cons, or I don't know how many cons Texas has. I know you guys just lost a con for the year. There is San Japan and there's Frontier. I've heard things about Matsuri, but I know that the Texas scene, I was told, like, yeah, there's you guys have baby cons, but when it comes to the major cons, it's like, well, crap, we just lost a con. Now I have to go to San Japan. So there's an uncertainty. So depending on the state, some people are like, well, I don't have another con to go to. I have to wait till next year. Then you wait till next year, or you find time outside of a con to do your photo shoot, or you work on your costume when you can. And that's my only advice. I know some people go to cons for different reasons. Some people go to cons because they love to meet people. They want to show people their cosplays. They want to showcase to people that they do have the skills. They just love meeting up with people and going to photo shoots, and that's totally fine. But not at the expense of your health and not at the expense of your mental health and everything else. Again, I can only advise. Pace yourself accordingly and do not force yourself to work on your costume if you are not mentally able to do so or not feeling well. Like I gave the COVID example. Like if you are sick, you come down with something, take the time to take care of your body. COVID racks your body, the flu racks your body. Like any illness can rack your body. You need time to rest. You have to recuperate. Do not be sitting at the sewing machine with COVID, can't breathe, trying to finish that seam. I've known people who have done it, it never works out well. That's the time that your body needs to rest. If it happens, you get sick, okay, I can't work on this costume right now. I need to make sure I'm better. So when I am better, I can get back to this costume, get back to this project. Any questions? Anyone have any experiences that they want to share? Did you all used to con crunch? Do you con crunch? Okay.
I've been cosplaying since 2008, and I am infamous among my friends for con crunching constantly.
Yeah, it was cute before, and then it's just like you get to a certain age, you can't do it anymore.
Right.
I would say I am over the age of 30, so I'm in the over 30s club. I can't do it anymore. Go ahead.
I did plan on enough time, and then my friends distracted me with a brand new game Monday. And I didn't plan for you too much.
Yeah, that was me when the Baldies Gate came out.
Oh.
And I was like, I don't know what this Baldur's Gate game is. And then my friends were like, you gotta play this game. And I'm like, all right. And then I made the mistake of starting it. And I had to push back Velvet. So, but yeah, some distractions will do that to you. Some anime will do that to you, like you're just binging a series or something. But at the same time, especially if you're not on a deadline, you don't feel as guilty, but when you are, it's a whole different story. Anyone else used to con crunch or still do and don't care about my advice? I mean, like I said, I can only tell you something. I can't make you drink the water. So, yes, in the back.
What kind of budget do you normally work with? You have like 4 months to get the costume ready. What kind of budget are you working with?
What kind of budget? That's another panel I should have brought here, was cosplaying on a budget. I will not toot my horn. I am blessed enough to be able to make money, but I'm still very frugal. The websites that I shared earlier, like Online Fabric Store and Fabric Wholesale Direct, they're very affordable fabrics. I'm the type of person, I don't believe in buying like $20 a yard fabric. It depends on how you work with the fabric. My WCS costume, the base was matte satin from Fabric Wholesale Direct, and it was $4.99 a yard. The most expensive part of my World Cosplay Summit costume was the lace, because lace is going to be expensive. But everything else, I still look for good quality fabric. I'm not gonna get like the cheapo stuff from Joann's or like the $2.99. Nothing wrong with that. But depending on what I want to, like if I'm making a ball gown or something, I want good quality satin. I don't want anything that feels cheap, but at the same time also has to be less expensive. So I look for deals. Like I said, sometimes I will go to the fashion district in New York. Hamed Fabrics, if you're ever in New York City, His fabrics, oh my God, you can find satin in every color under the sun. If you need satin in a weird orange or like a weird color, Hamed has you covered, and he's amazing. Yes.
Said just one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
So for us in Texas, there is a fashion district in Dallas.
Good to know.
Good is good to know. I don't know when I'll be back in Dallas. That is, I love looking at fashion.
I used to work at a sewing school, so I learned that from work.
That is awesome. Yeah, I want to make it a goal to like visit like all the fashion districts in like every state because it's in. I know LA is pretty big too. LA is usually very expensive because a lot of fashion designers go there as well. New York's fashion district is slightly dying, and I'm upset because gentrification and all that kind of stuff, and even the FIT's up in New York. Project Runway was up in New York. So the FIT students are like, we can't let this die. So definitely if you ever go to New York and you are a sewist, please, please, please support. Like MJ Trimmings, they're closing down. MJ Trimmings has been there forever. And their trim selection was amazing. And it really broke my heart to get the email saying, everything is 50% off, we have to leave. So that really woke up people like people who sew, like, well, crap, New York's fashion district is going down. So whenever you're in New York, please try to support all the fabric stores up there, especially Hamed. He's been there for years, and he loves cosplayers, and he will work with you too. He is a person that, like, hey, you're buying this in bulk, I'll give it to you for this price as well. I never try to lower it because he has to pay his rent. It's New York, it's expensive. So if he cuts me a deal, I take the deal. I don't try to lower it any further. But yeah, as far as budget, I try to be as frugal as possible without being too cheap. I know some people love like using silk for things, or what's it called, Silk Baron. There's a time and place for Silk Baron things. I personally, I haven't used any of Silk Baron stuff because I'm like, I can just use the faux silk and it looks good, just as good. It really works where if you're trying to look for a certain sheen or like a certain like style, but to me it's all about how you use the fabric and how you sew. If you can sew, you can use any fabric to make anything. Anyone else? Okay, so these are the phone apps and the planners. Cosplay Planner app is on iOS and Google Play. You can, I know it's called Cost Planner. That one is actually very popular. You have the physical cosplay planner books, most of which are on Amazon, are fine. I know Merida, she also makes sewing patterns as well. I'm actually really good friends with Merida. She had to leave her Etsy store, unfortunately, because of all the strikes with because she makes patterns for existing stuff. But I think her planner should still be on Amazon. If not, again, you can just get like the regular ones on Amazon, but I really like hers because she actually included like models, and you can draw what you want for your design on it. So it's kind of like a fashion type thing too, if you are into that. And regular planners are also fine as well. Like go to like Five Below, get yourself a really pretty planner. If you like writing. Again, for me, I have to have something in my face. I have to have something physical looking at me. So I love just writing down what I have done, what I need to get done. So it'll just help motivate me. And any questions before I go into my World Cosplay Summit video to see how that all came together? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Is that pockets?
It has a welted pocket. A fully welted pocket in the front, yes. I was able to fit many things into that pocket. It was wonderful. And it was, God, I just love that cosplay, sorry. I teared up earlier when I was with the cosplay, the international cosplay panel with Jen, because we competed in the same year. She was Philippines and I was Team USA. So it was nice to like, as a reunion, do that panel together. But yes. Pockets are very, very cool. So So let me find that video real quick. So here you see some of the detailing too. So all that freaking lace, all that stuff, and on the right hand side you see my inspiration, which is the Indian lehenga and the choli. More pictures of that costume, actually. So there's stills from our video. More stuff from our video. The storyboard for our video. Again, we had a time frame for everything. This is Jin stuff. It should be the video coming up. All right. And this is, they gave us like a Tekken video game.
Cosplay
It was
Summit
great.
2021. Team USA. Barracuda as Lieutenant Tenjo.
All right, come on. I think it's the internet.
Welcome to Stage VG.
Come on.
ChibiTifa as Anzi Himenia from
Oh, you want to be blurry now.
Revolutionary Girl Utena. Ready? Action!
God, the quality.
Haven't you been wearing those enough?
Miss Utana, is there anything I could do for you today?
No, I think I'm okay.
Well, if there's anything I can do for you, please feel free to let me know. As your betrothed.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about. So, this whole rose bride thing, I really don't understand it. And quite frankly, I think it's a little ridiculous.
That is my fate, after all.
And what if I can free you from this fate? If I can win all the duels and revolutionize the world, you can drop the rose bride thing, and we can just be friends.
Yes, those are two different jackets.
I'd like that very much, Miss Utana.
You can drop the miss.
Yeah, that was, we had to get all that done and turned in 4 months. And it took a lot. That was, well, Japan subtitled our video, but that was the video, that's the final video we went to championship with. We had an amazing time in Japan last year and going back for pleasure in October. It's a wonderful competition. If you ever get to the level that you want to do an international competition, I highly recommend World Cosplay Summit. Again, if you have any questions regarding competitions in general, whether it be international, I'm ChibiTifa everywhere on socials. I'm on Instagram, I'm on, we'll not call it X, Twitter. I'm on Threads, trying to be on Threads more, because I don't like Twitter from what it was turned into. I know World Cosplay Summit has its, people talk about it, but I've made so many friends thanks to that competition, and it has really just put into perspective just how many people all over the world love the same thing. Like, we all love cosplay, we all love anime, we all love video games, and to meet like-minded people from all over the world that love the same thing, hanging out with them, it was a wonderful experience. So, again, we only have 4 months to do this, but I'm so glad we did, and I would do it again. Any other questions? I think we are at time. All right, well, I will be in the hallway because I'm hungry. So I'm gonna try to head back to my hotel room. Again, if you are in the contest, I will be judging you tomorrow. If you have a time slot tomorrow, I cannot wait to see your costume. And I will literally be locked in a room. So you will not see me as Velvet until probably after 4. So yeah, I will be walking around with a giant wig on my head because that's how Has-Been works. I'll also be on the stage at the masquerade as well. But again, thank you so much for coming, and I'm just so happy you guys attended my panel. Again, I give advice because I care about cosplayers. You don't have to follow it, but I'm an educator, and my job is to educate and to lead and to teach. So hope you take my advice to heart, and you enjoy the rest of your con. Thank you.